Part 93. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 921. This time they brought all the money from the family. Although it can be rented or bought, everyone knows that Jian prefers to buy it directly. For things like shops, it is only at home that you can rest assured, otherwise what if you are driven away halfway? And after buying a shop, even if they have a foundation in the capital, their family members will be more confident here. Man Bao thought for a while and said, "It's not urgent, let Wu Ji and the others go out for a stroll when they have time, or find some work in the capital first, and then inquire about buying a shop when they are familiar. The money is not enough for me, think again." Man Bao chuckled and said, "It will be Mid-Autumn Festival in more than a month, and we will enjoy chrysanthemums during Mid-Autumn Festival." Zhou Lejun blinked. "Sister, you just came to the capital, can you still find beautiful and rare varieties of chrysanthemums?" Man Bao said proudly, "There are no flowers and plants in this world that I can't find. I can't find them now, and I will definitely find them in the future." "That's right," Zhou Lejun said thoughtfully, "every time you enter the city, you have to go to the flower market. You can squat down and dig an unremarkable grass on the way, and raise it when you come back. Just grow flowers, sister, is this considered a talent for you?" After thinking for a while, Man Bao nodded and said, "Forget it." Zhou Lejun nodded, "Just like the puppy in the village who is born to smell." Man Bao reached out and grabbed the pillow from the bed. "Say it again, what do I look like?" Only then did Zhou Lejun come back to his senses, and immediately shook his head and said, "Sister-in-law, I didn't say you look like a puppy." Zhou Lejun jumped up and ran out, successfully dodging Man Bao's pillow. Man Bao snorted twice angrily, and decided to ignore her before eating dinner today. But soon Zhou Lejun poked his head in again, and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law, let me tidy up your clothes for you." Man Bao took a look at the boxes she had piled aside, and reluctantly managed her, "Come in." When they first arrived in the capital, there were a lot of things to do, but they were not many. It was just that they were a little timid when they came to this strange place for the first time, so they felt that there were a lot of things to do. Mr. Zhuang felt much better after taking a nap. Seeing that the three of them had tidied up his room, he said, "Put down the things, and get the official documents later. I'll take you to the Imperial College. People go to Yang's house to send a letter, let them come to the house to pick up the things of the county magistrate." Mr. Zhuang arranged everything in an orderly manner, and the three of them wrote down one by one, and their hearts calmed down immediately. Even Bai Dalan, who was a little anxious at the side, calmed down and listened obediently. Bai Shan asked Lu Gui to deliver posts to Yang's house, and asked Daji to prepare the carriage. After taking a nap, they got up and went out after guessing that the Imperial College was also in the office. Mr. Zhuang asked Bai Dalan to ride in the same carriage. He hasn't been to the capital for many years, and he doesn't know what's going on in the Qiaozijian, let alone the situation in the capital. Although Bai Dalan may know very little, it's real time anyway. The place where they lived was not far from the Qiaozijian. When they left the alley, there was a street. Go forward, and after turning a corner, they entered another street. Walking along the street for a while was the yamen of the Qiaozijian. The gate of Qiaozijian is not wide, it faces the street, and it only enters 2 yards in a square shape. But next to it, there is a door with 4 gates, and 3 large characters are embedded on it, Qiaozijian. Man Bao felt strange, jumped out of the carriage and stared at the 2 doors seriously, full of doubts. Mr. Zhuang helped Bai Dalan's hand to get out of the car. Seeing the 3 of them staring at the 2 doors with their small heads up, he reached out and patted their heads and said, "Don't look, this is the Qiaozijian yamen. The offices of the school officials are next door to the 6 schools. The Qiaozijian not only manages the 6 schools, it also manages the government schools, county schools, and all private schools and colleges in the world. The number of books to be added to the prefectural and county schools, the appointment of academic officials, the increase or decrease of students, and the resulting finances are all supervised by the son of the state. There are also private schools in the world, and the Quasijian must also master them. For example, Mr. Zhuang, if he opens a school to accept apprentices to teach, no one will take care of him for a year or two, so he can teach him, but if he teaches for a long time, he will have to register and make books at the county government. Every year, these books are a copy of the list should be copied and sent to the capital to be directly returned to the Imperial College. In this way, how many teachers and students there are in the world, although there is no specific number, but it can be estimated that it is close to 10. It's not like that one day the emperor asked a famous gentleman from a certain place on a whim, and the people who came to the Imperial College knew nothing. Mr. Zhuang said, originally, the Imperial College was working together with the 6th Division in the Imperial City, but His Majesty attached great importance to the 6th Division. When the late emperor was still alive, he suggested that the Imperial College be moved to the side of the 6th Division. Now the Imperial College is divided into internal and external. The outside works here, while the inside stays in the Imperial City, and is mainly responsible for compiling books, walking in front of the Imperial Court, etc. You are here to study by the Emperor, so you should report here from the outside. Bai Dalan nodded again and again, yes, yes, it's fine here. Mr. Zhuang led the 4 of them into the Quasijian office. Bai Shankai took out the official document, and the people in the Quasijian understood that this was also a favored order to study. Although I was disdainful in my heart, I didn't show it on the surface. The main reason is that there are many people in the past few days, and there are not many knowledgeable ones. Embarrass them now. Say a fool, and the fool will come. Lian Yuchen came in and saw another group of people coming from the yamen, and he knew what they were here for at such a young age. He couldn't help but frowned, dropped the official document in his hand, and walked forward with his hands behind his back. Again, did you come to Beijing to study under the Order of Grace? Bai Shan looked up at him, but didn't respond. The school officer who entertained them looked up at the 3 of them, and could only answer instead, yes, they came from Jianese Road. Lian Yuchen glanced at the 5 of them, then at Bai Dalan, you want to enroll? Bai Dalan hurriedly bowed and said, it's not a student, it's a younger brother. He introduced Bai Shan and Bai Erlang and said, these are the 2 younger brothers of the student, and they are the ones who should be recruited this time. Lian Yuchen frowned and looked at the 2 of them, feeling that they were too young, so he raised his head and asked Mr. Zhuang, how many years have they studied? Are you a student of their family? Mr. Zhuang said with a slight smile, I'm Zhuang Sun, it's our husband. Bai Shan also glanced at him with a slight frown, skipped him and looked at the student officer behind him, and asked with a frown, can we go through the admission procedures? You have a big temper. Lian Yuchen became angry immediately, and asked, how many years have you been studying? Have you finished reading the 4 books? If you haven't finished reading, it's useless for you to enter the Imperial College. The next update will be around 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 922. The Emperor let me in. If you don't want me in, you can go directly to the Emperor and talk to him. If he won't let me in, I'll go home. He wanted to be patient, and he knew he had to be patient, but now that Lian Yuchen was looking at him, his anger just couldn't be suppressed all of a sudden. Bai Shan glanced at him coldly, then looked at the senior officer behind him, and asked, can it be done? Bai Dalan pulled him quickly, and said in a low voice, didn't I tell you to be patient when you were at home? Bai Shan opened his mouth to speak, but Man Bao on the side stretched out his hand to grab his hand, and then he pursed the corners of his mouth tightly, suppressing the anger in his chest with great willpower, and remained silent without speaking. Seeing the young man's arrogance, the academic officer quickly stood up to smooth things over, and said with a smile, It's already been recorded, and the number of students recruited by NZ is only too short. When the exam starts, you have to take the exam for 3 consecutive days, and after the results come out, you will be admitted to the 6th school according to the ranking. He laughed and said, so that Mr. Bai will know that this time His Majesty's decree has issued a total of 24 schools, each with 2 places. If there is no accident, there will be 48 students enrolled. Among the 6 schools, Kuaza School only takes for the top 3, 12 people will be selected from the Thai school, 12 people from the 4 schools, and the remaining 21 people will be scattered among the other 3 schools. Man Bao asked curiously, what if you are not good at any of them? The academic officer smiled stiffly and said, there is always something you are good at. If there is really no one who is good at, then he can only draw lots. Whoever draws such a student from the 3 colleges will be considered unlucky for him. Bai Dalan, Bai Shan, and Man Bao turned their heads to look at Bai Erlang at the same time. Bai Erlang met their eyes and said angrily, look at what I am doing, I will definitely be selected. Man Bao nodded and reached out to pat him on the shoulder. A group of people and the academic officer took a reference iron plate and left, ignoring Lian Yuchen who was standing aside the whole time. Lian Yuchen watched them turn around and leave, couldn't help frowning and looked at the senior officer, which hero are they are so defiant. The academic officer smiled and said, speaking of which, his father's official position is not very high. He is the lowest rank among the heroes named this time. He is the son of Bai Chi, the 6th rank former county magistrate of Shu County. He was loyal to the country because of the suppression of bandits. His Majesty he even praised him. Lian Yuchen stared, son of Bai Chi. Why, you know him. Lian Yuchen frowned and said, he was a Jinchi in my previous record. I heard about him, but I didn't expect him to die early. No wonder I haven't heard of him in these years. He was very famous in Taixue back then. The academic officer said thoughtfully, then it seems that what Bai Shanjiang is holding is not his family background, but his talent. Lian Yuchen snorted, this is the Imperial Academy. The place to study naturally depends on talent. Those who rely on family background should go to the rich and powerful to discuss it. Lian Yuchen looked better, and said, it won't be long before we know what he relies on, it's best to be talented, so that he can live up to his father. The school officer curled his lips inwardly, but responded with a smile on his face. A group of 5 people left the Kuazajian Yamen. Man Bao was still holding Bai Shan's hand, she turned to look at him and asked, why are you so angry all of a sudden? Bai Dalan was also about to talk about him, and was about to speak, but Mr. Zhuang at the side stretched out his hand and patted Bai Shan's head lightly with a smile and said, it's okay, there is nothing wrong with what Shan Bao said, just say it. Everyone opened their mouths wide to look at Mr. Zhuang. But Mr. Zhuang looked around and asked, Dalan, where is there a good restaurant around here? How about treating you to a meal in the capital for my teacher? See if it suits your taste. Do you want to eat something, what? Man Bao lowered his head and began to think about the menu. Bai Shan looked at Mr. Zhuang and asked, don't you blame me, sir? Mr. Zhuang smiled at him and said, no wonder. He paused and then said, but don't be so reckless in the future. After thinking for a while, he said, how about I take you to Suandu to see flowers tomorrow as a teacher? Man Bao asked, where is Suandu Temple? At Konggaifang, Mr. Zhuang said, we're going to climb the heights and look far away. This is a good time to climb high and look far away. One young man, 2 young men, and 1 young girl looked up at the bright sun hanging in the sky at the same time, feeling that the husband would also tell nonsense. In the hot summer, shouldn't it be a good time to hide at home, eat some cheese, and listen to some stories? Mr. Zhuang didn't give them much time to think, turned around and got into the car, and then waved to them, get in the car quickly, be careful of heat stroke after standing under the sun for a long time. The four of them got into their respective carriages. It was only then that Man Bao realized that she had been holding Bai Shan's hand, so she quickly let go and climbed into the carriage to take a good seat. Bai Erlang walked behind Bai Shan, and asked him curiously, "Why are the tips of your ears turning red? Did you suffer from heat stroke?" Bai Shan climbed into the carriage, turned around and glanced at him, saying, "No, you don't talk much." Daji watched the three of them from the side, and waited until they all got into the carriage before jumping into the carriage. Mr. Zhuang was very generous today and invited them to have a very expensive meal outside. He didn't force them to read and write the next day, but led them to Konggaifang and climbed all the way to Suandu Temple. It is said to climb high and look far away, but the Suandu Temple is not very high. Standing on its highest position and looking down, you can only see Konggaifang, and you can't see it from further places. Bai Dalan knew their hobbies, because when he came home, Master Bai complained more than once that his second brother liked to climb mountains at every turn, and his second brother often invited him to climb mountains together. Bai Dalan didn't like it. He was sweating profusely, leaning aside, and said, "If you want to climb a high mountain, you have to go to the city. There are no particularly high mountains in the city." He didn't understand why they couldn't walk up slowly and rest comfortably when they came to the Taoist temple. They had to climb up to the top in one breath. I don't know if they would sweat, be embarrassed, or be rude. Bai Shan also sweated a lot, but he felt very refreshed. He let out a big breath, and simply put his palm to his mouth and yelled loudly. When Man Bao and Bai Erlang saw it, they also yelled down the mountain like trumpet flowers, and Bai Dalan almost jumped up in fright. He stared at the three of them with wide-eyed eyes. He didn't understand why they were yelling like this. He looked around nervously, and saw that the people nearby also shocked them, and turned their heads to look at them. But seeing that there were three lively boys and girls, they turned their heads back again, and said helplessly in their hearts, "Forget it, you are still young." Unsurprisingly, Mr. Zhuang found a rock and sat down, and when they had finished shouting, he beckoned them over and handed them the water bottle. After they all drank the water, they asked, "Has the anger in my heart dissipated?" Man Bao nodded embarrassingly, and Bai Shan also nodded with a blushing face, "It's gone." Bai Erlang chuckled and said, "I'm not angry." Mr. Zhuang praised him, "Well, this time you are better than the two of them." Bai Erlang became proud and looked at the two of them happily. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 923. Mr. Zhuang said to Bai Shan, "Don't take everything in your heart. The human heart is so big. If it contains too many things, it won't be able to hold it. If you don't say it when it overflows, it will naturally affect the liver. The liver is uncomfortable, and the whole body is uncomfortable." Man Bao on the side was stunned, couldn't help giving a thumbs up and said, "Sir, you are so powerful, I didn't even think of it. The heart controls the circulation of blood, while the liver controls the blood. The heart stores the spirit and the liver controls the catharsis, and regulates emotions. There are too many things in my heart, and the blood circulation is not smooth, so it will damage the liver." Mr. Zhuang, "No, that's not what it means to be a teacher." Seeing Man Bao's shining eyes again, Mr. Zhuang said to himself, "Forget it, let them go, as long as they are happy." Bai Shan became thoughtful, "Then who should I tell if I have something on my mind?" Man Bao immediately raised his hand. Bai Erlang pushed her away and said, "You are a girl, you are not with us. Shan Bao, tell me what's on your mind in the future." Mr. Zhuang said with a smile, "You can also talk to Teacher Wei." Bai Dalan watched from the side, feeling left out. He began to sigh, and when Bai Erlang heard it, he turned around and said to him, "Brother, why are you sighing?" Do you also have something on your mind? Do you want to tell me? Bai Dalan pushed his face away. Go aside. After returning home from Guanli, Mr. Zhuang began to ask people to go around the Kuazijian to inquire about the situation of the students enrolled this time. He said, although you must be able to enter the Kuazijian, the situation of the sixth school is still different. If you can enter the Kuazixu, don't fall into the Taixu. If you can enter the Taixu, try not to go to the four schools. Mr. Zhuang said, inquire about the situation of the students this time, and who is the person who wrote the questions. You don't want to go anywhere these days. Stay at home and study with me to prepare for the exam. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang felt the pressure doubled. Only Man Bao was still studying at the same intensity as before. She giggled, and Mr. Zhuang looked at her. She immediately shrank her head and said in a low voice, Sir, I have to settle down for my brother and nephew. As for us, we still have to go to Jishitang. Only then did Mr. Zhuang look away from her, and Man Bao let out a sigh of relief. While Bai Shan and the others were going to climb the mountain, Wu Wulang and Saturday Lang also got to know the surroundings, found a place that sells vegetables, and learned about the prices of vegetables in the capital. Needless to say, the dishes in the capital are really more expensive than those in the countryside, but the meat is slightly cheaper than theirs. The two lead the big head and the second head, well, they have to be called by their first names when they go out, Zhou Lizhong and Zhou Liwei. The two big ones led the two young ones around this workshop, and found that there are few people here. There are basically no coolies squatting on the street waiting for work. Lu Gui, who came a few days earlier than them, said, this is the inner city. If you want to find such a place, you have to go to the outer city. Is the outer city far? It's not far away, just outside the Nanfang gate of our workshop is the Weiguo city. Zhou Wulang decided to go out to have a look tomorrow, and Man Bao would follow. I'm going to Jishitang. Lu Gui smiled and said, Miss Man, I have inquired about it. There are 4 Jishitangs in the capital, and there is one in our workshop. Which one do you want to go to? Man Bao blinked and asked, look for a shopkeeper named Zhen Yu. Which shop is he in? That's a coincidence. He is in Jishitang in our neighborhood. He is the second owner of Jishitang. I heard that he is in charge of the 4 pharmacies in the capital. Man Bao smiled and nodded, that's right, it's him. Dr. Ji said, look for him when you enter the capital. So the next day, the members of the old Zhou's family split up. Zhou Lijun stayed at home to get acquainted with the neighbors. Wu Wulang and the others went to the outer city for a stroll, and Daji sent Man Bao to Jishitang in the workshop. Man Bao originally wanted to go with a small backpack on his back, but Bai Shan was worried, and Daji insisted on sending her. Anyway, it is safe for the young master not to go out at home, and there should be no danger for other people to go out, but Man Bao is different. This one, whether it is danger looking for her or she looking for danger, he can't go wrong, so he still watch it. The Jishi Hall in the capital city is even bigger than that in Yazhu city, with 2 floors up and down, and the door is so wide that even the door plaque looks more grand than Yazhu city. Man Bao jumped out of the carriage, looked up at the door plaque with the basket on his back, reconfirmed that he had gone the right way, and then looked at the bustling Jishi Hall. Daji parked the carriage beside Man Bao, and Man Bao sighed to him, there are even more patients than Yazhu city. Do people in Beijing love to be sick so much? Daji, there are many people in the capital. That's true, but there are also many pharmacies in the capital. I grew up so old, and it was the first time I saw 3 in a row, and even the 3 on the opposite side were all pharmacies together. That's right, just now when Man Bao entered the street, he smelled a strong smell of medicine, and then looked outside, and found that Jishitang was sandwiched between 2 medicine shops on the left and right, and even the 3 shops on the opposite side were also medicine shops. Man Bao carefully compared the businesses of the 6 companies, and nodded in satisfaction, yes, Jishitang's business is not the worst. Although it doesn't look the best, but not up and down is the long-term way of the golden mean, right? Man Bao went in with a basket on his back. She looked left and right, and saw that there were 3 door curtains, and there were many patients sitting or standing in front of each door curtain, probably waiting to see a doctor. Looking at the counter again, there is a young man, 3 young men are behind, one settles the accounts, and the other 3 take the prescription and quickly take the medicine and weigh it, very busy. Man Bao took out Dr. G's letter from his arms, and was about to go to the counter to ask questions, when an old lady grabbed her and said, "Why don't you wait in line, little lady?" Man Bao paused, then turned around and walked behind her to line up silently. The old lady was satisfied after seeing this, and scolded her, "Do you know that you have to queue up to see a doctor and get medicine? We are all waiting in line at such an age. Why do you young people push forward instead?" Man Bao nodded to express his acceptance. After queuing for a quarter of an hour, it was her turn. The old lady handed in the prescription, and after paying the money, she stood aside and waited to grab the medicine. Man Bao stepped forward and handed the letter to the young man who settled accounts. "I am Yazhu City. It was recommended by Dr. G. I want to meet Master Zheng." Hearing the words, the young man looked her up and down, and asked with a smile, "Young lady's surname is Zhou, right?" Man Bao nodded. The young man smiled and said, "The treasurer has received a letter from Dr. G, and has been waiting for you." He glanced at the person behind her, thought for a while, handed the letter to her, and called a young man who was grabbing medicine, and said, "You stop for a while, and take Miss Zhou to the backyard to find the shopkeeper." "Yes." The old lady at the side watched in surprise as Man Bao followed the boy who was grabbing the medicine to the backyard, and it took a while before she came back to her senses. She couldn't help asking the young man, "Master Xiao Zheng, is this a relative of your family?" Shopkeeper Xiao Zheng said with a smile, "Not a relative, but a friend. She is also a doctor." "Oh, do you still have a female doctor in your pharmacy?" Shopkeeper Xiao Zheng smiled, but said nothing. Next update around 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 924. The relationship between Manbao and Jishitang can be traced back to 6 or 7 years ago, but she really started to understand Jishitang after she went to Yazhu City. The owner of Jishitang was surnamed Zheng, who had been an imperial physician. He heard from the old shopkeeper Zheng that a son of his family's direct branch had been admitted to the imperial hospital the year before last. Also because the owner's surname is Zheng, the shopkeepers in charge of Jishitang in various places are basically the Zheng family, but the old shopkeeper Zheng belongs to a very side branch. But he has good abilities, so he is in charge of Jishitang in Yazhu City, and even the entire Jianese road belongs to his faction. But no matter how powerful he is, he can't compare with Jishitang in the capital. Before coming here, Drg wrote to her, telling her that Zheng Yu in the capital is the second wife of the Zheng family, and they belong to the same descendant branch. Because Zheng Rui who entered the imperial hospital is Zheng Yu's younger brother, so now Zheng Yu has mastered it. Great voice. Ji Shitang in the capital basically listened to him, so she asked him to come over and continue to exchange medical skills with Zheng Yu. Man Bao followed his buddy into the backyard, and saw a man sitting on a stone bench in the yard, and a stone table in front of him had more than a dozen medicinal herbs, and he was holding one and smelling it. The treasurer. Shopkeeper Zheng raised his head when he heard the voice, and saw Man Bao who came in behind the clerk. "This is..." "Boss, this is Miss Zhou from Yazhu." Shopkeeper Zheng smiled, stood up and saluted and said, "So this is Miss Zhou. She is as young and promising as Lao Ji said." Man Bao hurriedly replied, "It's Dr. Ji who prays too much, and I have seen the shopkeeper Zheng Da." Shopkeeper Zheng Da hurriedly asked Man Bao to sit down, only then did he see Daji following her. "This is..." Daji bowed slightly and said, "Miss, I'm waiting for you outside." Man Bao nodded, "You go." Daji bowed and retreated. Shopkeeper Zheng Da's eyes flickered slightly. He took Man Bao's letter and glanced at it, then pressed it under his hands, and said with a smile, I received a letter from Yazhu a few days ago. I think Miss Zhou has also time to arrive. He smiled and said, I know, Miss Zhou and Lao Ji are friends for years, and have been exchanging medical skills. The prescriptions and acupuncture methods you gave are also very helpful to our Jishatang. I heard from Lao Ji in the letter that you are now already able to prescribe prescriptions independently. Man Bao nodded, and said modestly, it's all taught well by Dr. Ji. That's because Mrs. Zhou has a high level of comprehension, like my son, who has only learned superficially now, the shopkeeper Zhengda said with a smile. In this way, since Mrs. Zhou is able to prescribe independently, I will give it to him alone at Jishatang. How about opening a consultation room? How about the price of sitting in the hall? How about 5 taels of silver a month? Man Bao opened his mouth wide, pointed at himself and asked, I still have money for sitting in court. Shopkeeper Zhengda smiled and said, it's only natural. If you sit here to see a doctor, of course you will get some money. Man Bao said embarrassedly, but I'm here to study, and I only come for half a day every day, and I have to go home to study. Shopkeeper Zhengda said indifferently, it's nothing. The pharmacy used to have a lot of patients in the morning, but there are many fewer patients in the afternoon. You just sit in the classroom for half a day every day. As for studying, which doctor doesn't study while seeing a doctor? Counting me, there are 4 doctors in total. You can ask us if you have any questions in the future, and we will communicate with you more, just like you in Yazhu City. Man Bao hesitated. When she was in Yazhu City, she didn't charge any money. The main reason was that DRG said that she was fine with normal illnesses, but she still needs to exercise for some serious illnesses or intractable diseases, so although she can prescribe to see a doctor, but Dr. G always has to check again to make sure that the prescriptions she prescribed are all right. She felt that it was unreasonable for her not to pay the money, and it would be too much to take the money. Just when she was hesitating, the shopkeeper Zhengda went back to the house and took out a contract and handed it to Man Bao, and said with a smile, this is the treatment of our sitting doctor. Take a look. In addition to the monthly 5 taels of silver, quarterly there will also be 2 sets of clothes, shoes, and socks, and it will be cheaper for relatives and relatives to come here to see a doctor and get medicine. Man Bao glanced at the densely packed clauses, feeling even more embarrassed. She put the contract on the table, and said guiltily, Master Zheng, I appreciate your kindness, but Dr. G said that only I can recite it by myself. I have to go to the doctor with the medicine box, then I will be considered as a teacher. I still have a lot to learn now. I am already very grateful that Jishatang can let me put in an order to study here. How dare I get so much salary? Man Bao pushed the contract back and said, there is no need to pay for sitting in court, you just need to open a consultation room for me, and I have to ask the shopkeeper Zhengda and the doctors to help me to look at the prescription after I make a prescription. Oh, you're too polite, kid. The doctors in our shop can get paid as soon as they can sit in court and prescribe prescriptions. How can you treat you so poorly in this regard? Shopkeeper Zhengda insisted on giving it, but Man Bao refused. It's just that the shopkeeper Zhengda has a thicker skin. After all, Man Bao is young and his face is too thin. After a few pushes, his face turned red, but she remembered what her mother said. In life and things, she would rather suffer some losses first than think about it. Take advantage of others, otherwise in the end either you will feel bad about it, or you will be taken advantage of more. She felt that if she really accepted the contract today, she would definitely not be able to pass the test in her heart. How can she see DRG when she returns to Yazhu City? Although she was very tempted, 5 taels of silver was obviously not worth more than DRG. In order not to be embarrassed when she went back to see DRG in the future, she decided not to accept it. So her heart became cruel. She got up directly, picked up her small backpack and said, "Shopkeeper Zheng, if you continue to do this, I am embarrassed to place orders in Jishitang again. I will go to other places to have a look." Shopkeeper Zheng. He hurriedly stopped Man Bao, looked down at her expression carefully, nodded with a half sigh and said, "Okay, if you don't want it, then I'll open a consultation room for you." Man Bao heaved a sigh of relief, bowed to the shopkeeper Zhengda again and again, with a bright smile on his face. "Thank you, shopkeeper Zhengda, and please give me more advice in the future." Shopkeeper Zhengda twitched his lips and said, Let's ask each other to improve." After the matter was settled, shopkeeper Zhengda led Man Bao to the front to meet other people in the pharmacy. The location of Jishi Hall is very large. The lobby is divided into 3 parts, with a counter for collecting medicines and a large medicine cabinet for discharging medicines in the middle. There are 3 rooms directly facing the counter, directly occupying most of the space of the pharmacy, and there is another room behind the medicine cabinet, which is the place where the shopkeeper Zhengda sees the doctor. Usually, the regular customers of Jishitang go there to see the doctor. There will be no shortage of money, and I don't want to be crowded with the patients here. What Manbao didn't know was that the second floor was still a place for seeing a doctor, and there were small private rooms set up one by one. Usually, those who could go to the second floor were either rich or expensive. Therefore, the place in Jishitang and Tianmenbao is not too crowded, because the shopkeeper Zhengda directly transferred the best Dr. Gu in the shop to his place, and Manbao can directly use Dr. Gu's room when he comes tomorrow. Next update at around 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 925. Shopkeeper Zhengda led Man Bao out, clapped his hands in the lobby, and everyone stopped their movements, and the doctor behind the curtain comforted the patient and came out. Shopkeeper Xiao Zheng led the men who were grabbing the medicine and stood up. When everyone was here, shopkeeper Zhengda smiled and introduced Man Bao, who was still carrying a small backpack. "This is Dr. Zhou from Yazhu City. From tomorrow onwards, she will come to our pharmacy to sit in the classroom, and we will work together in the future, and we hope to take care of each other." Man Bao took a step forward to salute everyone, and said with a bright smile, "You can call me Man Bao, or Dr. Zhou. Please take care of me in the future." Dr. Gu looked at her and smiled. "The little lady is the little doctor who made Sankai's Higsu powder." The shopkeeper Zhengda on the side coughed lightly. Dr. Gu skipped the topic after a pause, bowed to Man Bao, and said with a smile, "I heard from Laoji that the young lady is extremely talented and has a strange book in her hand. It's just that they are young and not experienced enough. Given time, their achievements will be far above us. I don't dare to ask for advice, and we will communicate with each other in the future." Dr. Gu took the lead in demonstrating, and Dr. Tao and Dr. Yu hurriedly followed. Even the storekeeper Xiao Zheng came over with a smile and saluted Man Bao. Seeing that everyone was happy, the shopkeeper Zhengda was very satisfied, and said with a smile, "Okay, since we have met, let's go back and perform our duties. Don't make the patients wait." The 3 doctors went back to their consultation room, and shopkeeper Xiao Zheng also went back behind his counter. The patients waiting in the lobby looked at Man Bao curiously. Obviously it was the first time they saw a female doctor, and she was still such a young female doctor. But according to what Zhengda's shopkeeper and the other doctors said, the female doctor's medical skills seemed to be pretty good. The old lady who had just taken the medicine and had not had time to leave hesitated for a moment, but she came up and asked, "Little lady, are you a doctor too?" Man Bao smiled and nodded. "Then, will you see the rash?" "Rash? What kind of rash is it? Is it in pieces or one by one?" "There are not only pieces, but also one by one." "Oh, how about I bring her here tomorrow to show you?" Man Bao nodded. "Okay, then you can bring it tomorrow." The old lady clapped her hands happily. "Then I will come early tomorrow morning, you have to wait for me." Man Bao nodded. expressing that he must wait. When she left happily, Man Bao looked curiously at the shopkeeper Zheng Da. The shopkeeper Zheng Da led her back, and after avoiding the patients in front, he smiled and said, "This old lady has a granddaughter, this year she's only 13, and she's about to say goodbye, but there are many red rashes on her body for no reason. Unfortunately, the rash is on the chest and abdomen, so the doctors can only listen to the description, and haven't seen it." He said, "The doctors judged that there was dampness and poison in the body, and they have been prescribing medicines, but after taking it for more than half a month, her illness has not improved over and over again, but the skin is still festering. Listen to the old lady. According to the description, the patches of red rash are sticking together, the clothes sting just after being lightly brushed, and yellow fluid oozes out. Haven't the doctors seen the sick body?" Shopkeeper Zhengda shook his head. "It doesn't matter if she is younger, or 20 or 30 years older, but it happens to be the year of cardamom. Even if the doctors dare to look at it, her family will not agree." Man Bao nodded in understanding. "Then I'll come over early tomorrow and wait." Shopkeeper Zhengda nodded with a smile, and took her to the backyard. "There is a pharmacy at the back, and a place for doctors to eat and rest. I will ask someone to tidy up this small room and put a small bed for you to rest in. The backyard is quite large, and there are 2 large rooms where people can rest. One belongs to the Zheng family and his son, and the other is shared by the 3 doctors." According to the shopkeeper Zhengda, the pharmacy still has a doctor on duty every night to diagnose and treat emergencies that come knocking on the door at night, and sometimes even need to make outpatient visits. So in addition to the doctor, one of the shopkeepers must be reserved, and even shopkeepers Zhengda and Xiao Zheng are on night shift. Of course, there is no need for Man Bao, who is on the list. She is here to study and exchange knowledge. She is still the same as in Yazhu City. She only comes to Jishitang for half a day every day. Unless she encounters an emergency, she will not stay for long. After all, Mr. Zhuang has a lot of homework. Shopkeeper Zhengda took Man Bao to visit the important pharmacies, and talked about the rules and habits of Jishitang in the capital, and the whole morning passed like this. Shopkeeper Zhengda treated Man Bao to a sumptuous lunch before sending him to the door. Man Bao got into the carriage and waved goodbye to shopkeeper Zhengda with a smile on his face. Seeing that they said goodbye, Daji drove the carriage away. Halfway there, Daji couldn't help but said, "Miss Man, why have you never heard about Sankai's Higsu-san?" Man Bao said, "I gave them the prescription of Sankai's Higsu powder, but after researching with DRG and the storekeeper, Lao Zheng, we found that the ointment is much more effective than the medicine powder, so we changed the prescription and made an ointment." Said, "Come to think of it, Dr. G deserves the most credit here, followed by shopkeeper Lao Zheng, and at most I provided a Panax Noto ginseng and a frame." Man Bao knew what Daji wanted to say. She said, "I also have the prescription for the ointment, and even the G family has a copy. If I want to do this ointment business in the future, I can do it directly. But let me go over Jishitang. It is impossible to sell this ointment to other pharmacies." In Manbao's view, this is the most basic human and professional ethics. It's like G's family has a prescription in his hand, but he doesn't know how to do this business, and he won't disclose the prescription to other pharmacies. At most, he uses it for himself, or gives the finished product to relatives and friends. Or record the prescription in the book and pass it on. Why does the aristocratic family keep so many books and countless secret recipes? Isn't that how it came about? But they didn't publicize it so that the whole world knows, and they didn't use every item. The reason why the secret recipe became a secret recipe had to be kept secret first. In fact, Man Bao herself doesn't like this very much. She prefers to be like Ji Shitang, who has good things to make and advertise so that everyone in the world can benefit. It's just because there are Ji Shitang's interests in it. Otherwise Manbao wouldn't mind spreading the prescription of Sankai's Higsu powder and hemostatic ointment widely. Anyway, This thing is something that saves people, not something that hurts people. Daji was speechless for a while. Sometimes he really couldn't understand Miss Man, sometimes she was very similar to Master Joe, she seemed very stingy, but sometimes she spent money lavishly, a lot of money was given to others just for people, many things are bought without blinking an eye, some benefits are given up without even blinking an eye. The business of hemostasis powder and hemostatic ointment that Ji Shitang is doing now does not know how much profit it can bring. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 926. Man Bao opened the curtains and looked at the bustle outside with great interest. She has been walking around in the pharmacy, how could she not know the benefits? But it's not so easy to get. Panax nodo ginseng is only found in the southwest area, and most of them are wild. If you want to buy it, you have to send people to the southwest. There is so much miasma in that area, not to mention the old Joes, even other pharmacies that seem to have a solid foundation may find it difficult to send a large number of people to the southwest area to collect Panax nodo ginseng. And after the acquisition, it has to be escorted all the way back, let alone the sale of the finished product. Hemostatic ointment has a wide range of uses, but the thing that most reminds people of hemostasis in the world is the matter of weapons, so this medicine involves armaments. Only when Jishitang has a deep foundation can this business be finally done. The old Zhou family, let alone doing it, may be carried to the front and be used as a chopping board and smashed into a sieve. But now, half a year has passed since the world of medicine, Man Bao and Lao Zhou's family live a carefree life without disease or disaster. Obviously, Ji Shitang has taken all the benefits and prevented all disasters. With this alone, Man Bao can continue to exchange medical skills with them with peace of mind. Moreover, there is another thing that Man Bao didn't tell anyone. This medicinal material and this prescription are not something she came up with out of thin air, but Teacher Mo told him. Teacher Mo didn't ask her for anything. He said that this is a treasure left by history, and their descendants are also benefiting. Medicine is different from other disciplines. It is a discipline of saving lives. It is not a businessman, but a doctor and teacher. The former heals life, and the latter teaches people to fish, so he doesn't need to care too much about interests. People can only hold so many things in their hearts. If you care about more things, these two things will become shallower in your heart, and your knowledge will become less. Teacher Mo hopes that Manbao will do the same. He has always felt that Manbao has learned too much and should focus on medicine instead of wasting his talent. Mr. Zhuang also told Manbao that she doesn't need to learn too much, she just needs to read books with him, know the truth of the world, and learn medical skills well. If only one teacher said so, Manbao might not be convinced, but if two teachers said so, Manbao knew that she should listen to them, so she never cared too much. In the words of Mr. Zhuang, things in this world are not black and white. If you really have to figure them out one by one, I am afraid that you will spend the rest of your life in calculations. That would be too boring and a waste of time. So Manbao feels that there are some things that need to be taken care of, but there are actually many things in the world that don't need to be taken care of one by one. Daji didn't quite understand this, but he saw that Miss Man knew it well. It wasn't that he was deceived by Ji Shitang, it was just that he didn't want to care about it, so he was relieved. Back in Changqing Lane where they rented, Mr. Zhuang and his 3 apprentices had just finished their morning classes and were waiting for lunch. Seeing Manbao coming back, he asked with concern, "How is it? Is the Jishitang in the capital easy to talk to?" "It's easy to talk," Manbao said happily, "the shopkeeper Zhengda is very kind, but he is too polite, and he even pays me to sit in the hall." Mr. Zhuang, who was drinking tea, almost spit out the tea. He asked, "You agreed?" Man Bao shook his head regretfully. I don't have the nerve to ask for it. I only have to sit in court for half a day, and I have to learn skills from the doctors. It's fine if I don't pay the money. What will it look like if I get the money? Mr. Zhuang swallowed the tea, put down the teacup and asked, how much do you pay for sitting in court? 5 taels a month. Zhou Lejun raised his head in surprise. So many. Man Bao nodded. Yes, being a doctor can really make money. Mr. Zhuang asked, the money I promised you? No, you have to sign a contract. In addition to money, you also get clothes, shoes, and socks every season. Their treatment at Jishitang is really good, Man Bao said. I've made up my mind. When I graduate from school, I'll go to sitting in the Jishitang. Sitting in the pharmacy, you earn more than farming at home. Zhou Lejun nodded again and again. In a few years, they will not be able to sell the new wheat seeds. The whole Jianese road will gradually be replaced with new wheat seeds. The money is really not as much as my sister-in-law. Sure enough, it is good to have a skill, but it is a pity that she can't memorize medicinal materials, and can't learn medical skills, otherwise she will learn from her sister-in-law. Mr. Zhuang saw both his aunt and nephew looked regretful and moved, and he suppressed his smile and asked, what else is written in the contract besides these? I didn't look down. She resisted it with strong willpower. I'm so sorry. After watching it for a long time, what if he misunderstands that my heart is moving? Bai Shan said, you have already been moved. But it's not good to let him know. Mr. Zhuang shook his head and said with a smile, you should continue to read, silly girl, the benefits are not for nothing. If you take the sitting fee of Jishitang, then you will be the doctor of Jishitang from now on. How much can you get? This is still a trivial matter. The most important thing is that the contract has always stipulated the number of years. You may stay in Jishitang for 10 or 20 years, but you are still young, and there is still a long way to go in the future. There is really no need to make it so early. Mr. Zhuang was really afraid that the child would be embarrassed, so he signed the contract because of his heart. Man Bao opened his mouth wide. Then don't I want to stay in the capital forever? I have to go home to see my parents. Bai Shan immediately said, then there must be no time, you are equivalent to selling yourself as a long-term worker. He said, this shopkeeper Zhengda is dishonest, are you still going? Go, why don't you go? Man Bao said, I want to learn from him. No, it's to exchange medical skills, don't take this kind of thing to heart. Anyway, now that I know, I won't sign the contract. Mr. Zhuang nodded. Yes, you came to Beijing not only to gain knowledge, but also to learn knowledge. The Zheng family has produced several imperial doctors, and there is one in this generation. If you study there, even if you don't meet anyone, if you have difficult questions, you can also ask others for advice, and this alone is much more convenient for you than many doctors. Sir, have you inquired about Jishitang? Mr. Zhuang glanced at her and said with a smile, do you really think that Mr. don't listen to anything outside the window, and only teach you to read sage books? Since he promised Mrs. Lu and Master Bai to take them to Beijing, he must be ready. While talking, Aunt Rong yelled in the kitchen, the food is ready, we can eat now. Zhou Lejun immediately got up and went to the kitchen to serve food. Man Bao and Bai Shan Bai Erlang also went to help. Aunt Rong brought out the pot containing the rice, and said, Master, there are so many people in the family, I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it all by myself, why don't you hire 2 helpers? Now they have not only the master, but also servants in their family. Bai Erlang brought 2 servants to the capital, and their Bai family was a whole bunch of people, including her, there were 6 in total, and counting the young master and servant next door. It is tiring to cook meals for so many people every day. Zhou Lejun immediately said, we can all help. Aunt Rong smiled and said, how can I let Miss Zhou do these things? I'd better hire 2 helpers, you guys, you are busy with things outside. Next update around 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 927. Manbao nodded, "That's right, let's hire 2 helpers from the local area, so that we can get acquainted with the people here." Bai Shan nodded, called Lu Gui and said, "Go and recruit people." Lu Gui agrees. Everyone put the food in the yard, and Lu Gui and the others went to the front yard to eat by themselves. Manbao was sitting on the side. Bai Erlang looked at her, "Aren't you going to eat?" Manbao shook his head, "The shopkeeper Zhengda invited me to eat." Bai Erlang nodded and said, "I can see that he really values you very much." He looked at Manbao curiously, "Didn't you just give them a few prescriptions? Why do they value you so much?" Manbao said, "I'm not just giving them prescriptions, we've been exchanging medical skills, and if I know anything, I'll tell them as long as they ask." Therefore, Manbao also learned medical skills in Jishatang very confidently, because they communicated and taught each other. Mr. Zhuang tapped the bowl lightly, "Hurry up and eat, go and rest for a while after eating, we have a new class in the afternoon." Bai Erlang's face was a bit bitter, "Sir, I just started a new class in the morning, why do I still have it in the afternoon?" "Math in the afternoon?" Bai Erlang blinked, "Didn't you say that the main mathematics can be put aside for the time being?" Mr. Zhuang sighed, "That's Bai Shan, you can't do it?" He pointed to Bai Shan and said, "He has already learned all the arithmetic that he should learn, it is enough for the Imperial College entrance examination, can you do it?" Bai Erlang lowered his head. Mr. Zhuang said earnestly, "Although you have obtained the decree, you will not fail no matter how you take the exam, but you will be able to choose the college you want to go to if you do well in the exam, so you still have to work hard." Manbao nodded again and again, "You have to enter at least 4 schools, right?" Bai Erlang was not very confident. "Lu Gui has already said that the students recruited this time are the youngest of us. They are older than us and must have studied longer than us." Mr. Zhuang couldn't help scolding him, "You haven't taken the exam yet, and you have lost your confidence. Who said that the older you are, the more time you have to study? Isn't Bai Shan younger than you, but he is half a year earlier than you, what about Kaiming? Who said that if you have been studying for a long time, you will be more knowledgeable than you? Manbao studied later than you, and he has not spent more time studying than you in the past 2 years, so he is still more knowledgeable than you." Bai Erlang said in grief and indignation, "Sir, are you encouraging me or hitting me? I am admonishing you. From this we can see that if they are older than you, they may not be better than you. They have studied longer than you, and their knowledge may not necessarily be higher than you." Mr. Zhuang said, "Do you not believe in yourself, or do you not believe in yourself, as a teacher?" Manbao and Bai Shan nodded repeatedly, "That's right, our husband is better than their husband, even if you are stupid, you can learn faster than them and know more than them." Bai Erlang got lucky and said, "I'm not stupid." Bai Shan nodded and agreed, "So what are you afraid of? There are only 48 people, as long as you pass half of the people who pass the exam, you can enter the 4 subjects. If you can pass 2/3 and 1 person, then you can enter very learned. Taishui is a higher level than your elder brother's college." There was light in Bai Erlang's eyes. He grabbed a piece of braised pork, took another bite and ate it, nodded and said, "You are right." Bai Erlang turned his head and said to Bai Shan, "When the time comes, I will study in Taixue with you." Bai Shan shook his head, "No, I want to study Kuazixu, Taixue, go by yourself." Bai Erlang opened his mouth wide. Manbao turned his head and said to Bai Shan, "Why don't you come back for lunch at noon tomorrow, and go to the bookstore for you, and look for the papers of the Kuazixu exams in the past 2 years. Will there be a bookstore? If not, I will take a trip to the Imperial College with Daji. I think there will always be students who will keep them, and I will just pay for them at that time." Mr. Zhuang said, "The exam is in 2 days. It's okay, you are studying at home, if you can find it, 1.5 days is enough for us to see it, if you can't find it, it's just luck. Bai Erlang said hastily, you have always been lucky, why don't you go pay homage to Master Tianzun in a while, and go in the afternoon? I have class in the afternoon. Then go in the evening. After saying that, she looked at Mr. Zhuang anxiously. Mr. Zhuang knew that this little disciple still had no confidence. Just to reassure him, Mr. Zhuang could only nod his head, and said to Man Bao, go and have a look after class in the afternoon. It happens that the Imperial College is also leaving school. Man Bao responded, then reached out to Bai Erlang and Bai Shan. Bai Erlang was confused, why? Bai Shan has already lowered his head and untied the purse from his waist, found a piece of silver from it and put it in her palm, then looked at Bai Erlang. Only then did Bai Erlang come back to his senses. He stretched out his hand to feel for it, but he didn't find any money, so he waved his hand indifferently and said, I owe you first, and I'll pay you later. Okay. Man Bao collected Bai Shan's money, yawned and got up, sir, I'm going to take a nap first. Go. In the afternoon, the three of them sat down at the desk, and the door was knocked like someone stepped on it. Lu Gui quickly came in to report, Mr. Zhuang, young master Tang, Miss Man, someone from the Yang family is here. The four people in the room looked at each other, and Mr. Zhuang got up and said, please sit down in the lobby and have tea. The person from the Yang family is a chief steward, and there is also a nanny who is in charge. The visitor not only came, but also brought greetings to everyone. The nurse in charge took Man Bao's hand and said with a smile, the old lady said that I should invite Mrs. Zhou to sit at home when I have time. It's a long way, and I trouble you to bring these things all the way back to Beijing. It's really hard work. Man Bao said, it's not hard, everything is directly tied to the car. Anyway, our car is not full, it's just a matter of incident. The nanny in charge didn't expect Man Bao to be so sincere, so she was taken aback for a moment before laughing. Miss Zhou really likes to joke. The chief steward at the side also finished his courtesy with Mr. Zhuang. They just came to get some things and get to know the person their young master wanted them to take care of. The most important thing is to leave a name card from their house. With this name card, they can use this name card to solve troubles in the capital in the future, or come to ask the Yang family. After all, Yang's door is not so close, and the masters in the mansion can see it quickly if there is a famous post. Of course, they don't know the origin of Bai Shan and the others, let alone their ultimate purpose of going to Beijing. They only think that they are really meritorious officials who came to Beijing to study. It's just that their young master is the county magistrate in Lujiang County, and they happen to be from Lujiang County, so they have a good relationship. Speaking of which, although their young master is gentle and humble, he seldom brings friends over, let alone friends who are taken care of by his family. So when the mansion received their posts and letters yesterday, the old lady in the mansion happily ate half a bowl of rice, and then accumulated food. Today, they invited a doctor for half a day, and they came to pick up things in the afternoon. Originally, they should have come here in the morning to show their importance. The chief steward and the steward's nanny left a name card, bowed repeatedly, and then resigned. Even Mr. Zhuang, who has always been strict, couldn't help stroking his beard and said, after all, he is a servant of a family, and he is indeed polite. It's not just polite, it's so polite, it makes Mr. Zhuang feel a little ashamed. Next update at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 928. Man Bao and Bai Shan Bai Erlang also stood at the second gate to watch the people of the Yang family leave. Mr. Zhuang turned his head and saw that they were motionless, so he coughed lightly and said, okay, so many people are digging stones and paving the road for you. It's time to work hard. The three of Bai Shan bowed in unison, and went back to the study with Mr. Zhuang. Man Bao finished his new class, recited it a few times silently, and finished his homework. He sank into his consciousness and glanced at the time in the system. When he felt that it was almost time, he got up. "Sir, I'm going out." Mr. Zhuang waved. "Go, go." Bai Shan raised his head from the book, and said to the window, "Daji, you can send Manbao." Daji agreed and went to the front yard to drive a carriage. Manbao turned around and found a large piece of white paper, picked up a pen and wrote a line of large characters on it: receiving papers, the papers for Qiuazixiu and Taixiu's mid-year exams, year-end exams, and final exams. After finishing writing, Manbao blew while Mr. Zhuang was stunned, and when he was almost done, he rolled up and walked away, and reached out to greet Mr. Zhuang. "Sir, I am really leaving. Shanbao, please remember to help me wash your pens." It was only then that Bai Shan found out that she hadn't washed the pen, and he wanted to express his objection, but Manbao had already fled away. Bai Shan couldn't help mumbling, he hated washing pens the most. Manbao carried her small backpack on her back. There were pens, ink, paper and inkstone in the backpack. When they arrived at the gate of the Qiuazijian, it was the time when they were leaving school, and many students came out of it together. Manbao immediately took out the big sign and handed it to Daji. "Quickly open up and stand in front of the gate." Daji. The two stared at each other for a while, and Manbao asked, "Is there a problem?" Daji blushed ashamed. He silently unfolded the large paper and stood opposite the gate of the Imperial College. Manbao nodded in satisfaction, put the basket by his feet, stood beside him with his little hands behind his back and waited in satisfaction. The students who filed out glanced at the white paper stretched out in Daji's hand, then at Manbao, and left one after another, but some stopped to look at it for a while, and then couldn't help but waved their folding fans and came forward. "Little lady, you want to collect papers?" Manbao nodded. "You have." He laughed and said, "I'm a student of Qiuazixiu, how could there be none? But the papers are at home, it's too troublesome to get them. Why don't you write them down when I read them?" Manbao smiled and said, "Of course." She turned around and took out the paper and pen from the basket, smiled at him and said, "Read it." The other party raised his eyebrows, apparently not expecting her to be so well prepared, and said with a smile, "No hurry, let's talk about the price first." Manbao said, "A set of papers costs a penny." "Only a penny?" "A penny is already a lot." "Okay," Manbao said, "I didn't ask for your answer, and you didn't write the paper, and I didn't even ask you to write it out. You didn't even pay for pen, ink, and paper, so I just repeated it. Isn't it too much to earn a penny at once?" "But this is a paper from Qiuazixiu." "Yes, that's why I gave you a penny. If it's a paper from another academy, I won't give you 10 pennies. Student. Manbao was ready and asked, "Are you going to sell it or not?" The other party froze for a moment, then nodded and said, "Sell." You can listen carefully. After he coughed lightly, he read with his hands behind his back. Kong Gao said, "K Mingd." Tai Jia said, "Gu Tengtian's Ming Ming." Didion said, "K Ming Yunda." It's all self-evident. Manbao looked at him quietly. Seeing that Manbao hadn't written the pen, he asked, "Why don't you memorize it? Don't you know how to write?" "It doesn't matter, I'll write it for you, and just pay an extra penny for the writing fee." Manbao dodged his hand and asked, "And then? Is this the topic of policy theory?" "No, this is the scripture." Manbao asked angrily, "You posted the scripture test university. The student blinked. "That's right, university is the most important thing in Book of Rights, so of course it has to be taken." Manbao thought for a while, and felt that what he said made sense, so he asked, "Do you often take the university exam in Qiuazixiu?" "Okay, do you remember?" Manbao glanced at him, wrote only the word university on the paper, and then continued to ask, "Where did most of the scriptures come from? Are they all in university?" The student smiled at her and said, "Gentlemen like to draw questions from the Book of Rites." Book of Rites is such a thick book, but Bai Shan has memorized it down. Bai Erlang thinks it's enough. Which part of Book of Rites is it? The student said, "The price is different." Man Bao looked at him suspiciously, and asked, "Forget it, let's put aside the scriptures and whatnot. What was the topic of your policy theory exam at the end of last year? This is the most important thing." The student blinked and said, "Nonsense, the so-called one who is sincere, don't deceive yourself." "That's it?" Man Bao bit his pen and looked at him, and asked suspiciously after a while, "Which year's end-of-year exam was the scripture you gave me just now?" "It was last year." Man Bao gritted his teeth and asked, "Will your husband publish the scriptures and policy theory in the same book when he proposes a question?" The student coughed lightly and said, "It's impossible, we only learned university. Man Bao looked at him suspiciously, "You only learned university at such an old age?" The student couldn't help touching his cheek and asked, "Am I very old?" The students who had been suppressing their laughter could no longer hold back their laughter, and said with a big laugh, "Feng Zonping, don't make fun of me, little lady. Last year, the strategy theory of Kuazixu was clearly that the strength of the south is stronger than that of the north. The strong and the strong and the strong and the gentle? To teach with gentleness, not to repay the injustice, the south is also strong. A gentleman lives in it." Just when Feng Zonping was about to fight back with a smile, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Man Bao quickly writing down the words Zi Lu Wenqiang in the doctrine of the mean on the paper. "Man Bao, what are you doing asking questions, little lady?" Man Bao said angrily, "You lied and cheated, and you lost a penny." Feng Zonping smiled and apologized, and said, "I didn't mean it, it's just the first time I saw someone collecting the papers at the gate of the Imperial College, so I couldn't help but wonder, which bookstore did the young lady collect the papers on behalf of? I'm here for my junior brother. He's about to take the Kuazixu exam. I want to get some papers for him." Feng Zonping laughed and said, "This big exam is different from the papers we take at the end of the year." Man Bao asked curiously, "Why is it different?" "Easy ones are much easier, and difficult ones are harder," he said with a smile. "We have studied in the Imperial College for a few years. The easy papers can't be easier than the exams, right? Doesn't it mean that there is no progress after entering school?" "That makes sense. If your sacrificial wine gives questions to first-level students, what book does he like to write questions from?" See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 929. Feng Zonping looked at her suspiciously. Before he had time to speak, Yun Xingxuan, who was behind, had already smiled and said, "Jiju's favorite is to come up with questions from Confucian classics, but there are so many Confucian classics, do you remember coming here?" Man Bao was thoughtful. "Yes, he is from the Kong family." She looked at them with sparkling eyes, and asked, "Then do you have the questions that Kong Jiju has given to first-level freshmen over the years?" Feng Zonping confirmed it, and asked, "Your junior won't take the entrance exam in 2 days, right?" Man Bao glanced at him, nodded and said, "Yes." Feng Zonping rubbed his chin and asked, "Do you know how to explain the theory of Zi Lu Wenqiang just now?" After thinking for a while, Man Bao said, "Let's explain it from the perspective that gentlemen are harmonious but not indiscriminate, the country has its own way, and it remains unchanged." Feng Zonping stroked his palms. Yes, yes, how does your junior brother compare to you?" Man Bao thought for a while, and said reluctantly, "Slightly stronger than me." Feng Zonping said with a smile, "Then he will be fine in taking the Kuazixu exam. This is my second level year-end exam. Now that I am in the third level, he can solve such a strategy, even if he is a little worse than those people much stronger. Man Bao's eyes lit up slightly, and he asked, do you know the other 46 students? How knowledgeable are they? Feng Zonping looked at her but smiled silently. Man Bao became more confident, and then became distressed after thinking about it, but I have 2 juniors. Everyone, what does this mean? Man Bao looked back and forth at the 4 students who were surrounding her, and narrowed his eyes with a smile. Let me treat you to dinner, you have grown up and can drink wine? Let me treat you to a drink, let's talk about the previous year's exams. How about the subject? Can you remember it? Feng Zonping, both of your juniors should be recruited. Man Bao nodded, they belong to the family. So, you are not in the same family as them. Different surnames, how about it, should we have dinner together? Feng Zonping looked around and asked, why don't they come in person? They are being locked up at home by their husbands to study, and they probably won't be able to come out for the next 2 days. Do you want to drink? I heard that there is a restaurant in front that has very good wine. Yi Xiang on the side interrupted and asked, is it the Zhuangyuan building? Man Bao doesn't know what building it is, she doesn't even know the way, but since someone named the name of the restaurant, she nodded and said, that's right, it's the Zhuangyuan building. Yi Xiang tugged on Feng Zonping's sleeve, and said in a low voice, where's the wine from Zhuangyuan building? Feng Zonping glanced at him, and whispered, can you remember the exam questions over the years? Yi Xiang was silent for a while and then said, how many nonsense are you making a fool of? Didn't I try it just now? She even solved the question of the doctrine of the mean. Think about how you broke this question years ago, so you can't fool yourself if you think about it with your toes. Man Bao saw them whispering together, although she couldn't hear what they were talking about, but after thinking about it for herself and Bai Shan Bai Erlang, she could guess the general idea. She sighed and said, I see, you must not have memorized the questions, but it doesn't matter, you should still keep the papers. You can give me the papers, I can wait for you here, wait for you to get the papers. Come, let me buy you a drink. The 4 remained silent. Man Bao understood at a glance, well, it seems that you, like my little junior, not only forgot the exam questions after the exam, but didn't even keep the papers. 4 people, whoever is free to keep the exam papers, they must stuff them wherever they can. Man Bao sighed, cupped his hands and said, there will be a time later. 4 people. Feng Zonping couldn't help but said, you are useless here. He motioned her to look at the students coming out of the door one after another. Most of them just took a look and left without staying long. You saw it too? At most, everyone looked at it curiously. Who will come up to sell papers? Man Bao asked curiously, why don't you sell it? Yi Xiang said, because there is no shortage of money. Those who cannot live in the school, either live in the capital, or can afford to rent a house outside, who is short of money. Feng Zonping said with a smile, yes, most of the students of Qiaozixiu are the children of officials with a rank above 3, and they basically live outside. There are only a few ordinary people who can be admitted to Qiaozixiu, but most of them live outside. The students of Taixiu, most of them are the children of 4th rank officials, and the 4 schools are the children of 5th rank officials, and those who are really short of money and need to sell papers live there. Man Bao asked angrily, then why did you come here? Feng Zonping coughed lightly and said, aren't I curious? By the way, which family did your junior brother come from? Is it the ancestors or the heroes, or? Man Bao said, it's his father, but I won't tell you who his father is. Well, I've found someone I know, let's go first. Man Bao saw Bai Dalan, patted Daji, and greeted Bai Dalan. Bai Dalan found them as soon as he went out, so his mouth was wide open, with an unbelievable expression on his face. Man Bao stepped forward and pulled Bai Dalan aside. Senior brother Bai, have you found out the exam papers from previous years? Bai Dalan shook his head in a daze. Time is too tight, how can it be so fast? But Man Bao, why did you just hold the paper and close the paper at the door? Let the doctors know that you have to reprimand. I'm not a student of Qiu. What are you afraid of? 2. Bai Dalan nodded. After nodding, he still felt that this was not good. Just as he was about to talk to her, Man Bao said quickly, "Senior brother Bai, please go in again, don't look for your classmates, they just started school too, it's been a few months, and the plates haven't been cooked yet, so if you look for a second-level senior, those from a less affluent family, easy to make friends, and lively, even if they don't have a test paper, they will definitely know who has won." Bai Dalan pondered for a moment and then nodded. He was also admitted from Mianzhou one by one. He naturally knew that some bookstores secretly sold all kinds of secret papers, and these papers were basically from the students in the school. It's just that he used to buy papers directly from bookstores, or use Mr. Zhuang's relationship to get the papers they compiled directly from the gentlemen of the government schools, and rarely inquired directly with students like this. So he was still a little embarrassed, and his face turned red. Man Bao was very worried when he saw this, and felt that this senior brother's face was much worse than his own brother's. Man Bao stuffed his money bag to him. "Brother, as long as you have enough money, there is no paper in this world that you can't buy." Bai Dalan nodded without confidence, "Okay." Feng Zonping and Bai Dalan walked over after entering, watched the person disappear with Man Bao, and asked, "Is this a student of the four schools? Do you know each other?" Man Bao ignored him. "Hey, little lady, this is very bad. If I can't get the paper, you just ignore me." Man Bao said, "The main reason is that you still deceive people." Feng Zonping coughed lightly and said, "Then I'll tell you again, shall I?" Next update around 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 930. Man Bao thought for a while and accepted his apology, but there was no need to think about buying a drink or something. She found a shade under the wall of the Imperial College and stood there to hide from the sun. Some of the onlookers felt bored, and said goodbye to Feng Zonping one after another, and finally 3 people remained. The 3 of them also hid under the wall. Man Bao raised his head and stared at them. "Why don't you leave?" Feng Zonping said with a smile, "We have nothing to do, so let's wait with you. By the way, you look young. Isn't your junior brother even younger? Are you 14? Feng Zonping looked at Man Bao suspiciously. She looked only 12 or 13 years old. Wouldn't the younger brother be younger? Man Bao knew the rules of the 6 studies, and only accepted students from 14 to 21, but they came to study at the Emperor's will. That is to say, there is no more. Feng Zonping was surprised. "Your accent is not from Chang'an, where are you from?" Man Bao looked at him and said nothing. Feng Zonping smiled and said, "Well, if I ask you a question, you can also ask me a question. You can't lie or say you don't know. If you really don't know, we will fill in the next question until how can you answer it." Man Bao thought it was a good idea and nodded. Yun Xingxuan and Yi Xiang on the side looked helpless. "Where is the little lady from?" "I'm from Jianese Road." Feng Zonping, this answer is really broad enough, but he also figured it out. Although she speaks official language, she is obviously from the Sichuan area. "May I have your name?" Man Baidao, it's my turn to ask, among all the Confucian classics, which one do you most admire for offering wine? Feng Zonping, of course it's the Analects of Confucius. Man Bao said, "My surname is Zhou, and my name is Zhou Man. Which book do you like most for offering wine?" Feng Zonping thought for a while, then looked at Yun Xingxuan. Yun Xingxuan said with a smile, "Let's say University, and the Analects of Confucius is also often smoked." Feng Zonping asked quickly, "What's your junior brother's name?" Man Bao, Bai Cheng. Feng Zonping waited. Seeing that she stopped talking, he asked, Where's the other one? Are you going to ask 2 questions at once? Feng Zonping was lucky, and said aggrievedly, no, you ask me first. You know, among the students who applied this time, how many do you think can be admitted to take XU if they take the big exam normally? Feng Zonping looked at her for a while and said, 2. Including the younger brother who is slightly stronger than me, Man Bao said, you answer my question first. Feng Zonping was silent for a while and then replied, including, what is the name of your junior brother's father, and what official position did he hold? Man Bao gestured at 2, indicating that there are 2 problems. Feng Zonping nodded and said, I know, you can ask another question later. Man Bao smiled and said, my junior brother's father is Bai Li, and he has never held any official position. Feng Zonping blinked, realized, pointed at Man Bao and said, you are so treacherous, aren't your 2 junior brothers the same father? Man Bao smiled at him and asked, is this a problem? No, Feng Zonping said hastily, forget it, you can ask me. Gentlemen in Xiatian take poetry and Fu exams, what's your favorite question? Feng Zonping looked at Yi Xiang. Yi Xiang thought for a while and said, there are lotuses, there are also bamboos and the like, sometimes pointing to a corner of the garden and asking us to compose poems, that's a lot. Man Bao wrote down one by one, seeing that Feng Zonping still wanted to ask questions, she stopped him and said, okay, I'm fine now. Feng Zonping couldn't hold back, and said, I only have one last question, and you can ask me another question. Man Bao nodded after thinking about it, okay, you can ask. Who are you, sir? Zhuang Sun, the word Sun Mi, Man Bao asked with a smile, are you a child of the Minister of Punishment? Yun Xingxuan and Yi Xiang also looked at her in surprise. Feng Zonping asked, how do you know? Man Bao didn't have to wait for his answer, she smiled and said, I have a friend who is very similar to you. His father used to be from the Ministry of Criminal Justice. When you asked me just now, I thought, your father is also from the Ministry of Criminal Justice, right? But I thought, if your father is not from the Ministry of Criminal Justice, it's fine if your grandfather is from the Ministry of Criminal Justice. What a coincidence, your surname is Feng. Feng Zonping glanced at Yun Xingxuan, he was the one who broke his name, he asked, who is your friend? Like him, you always have many questions, but unlike him, he never asks me these questions directly. Man Bao saw Bai Dalan coming out with a book basket, and she waved to them. I'm going home, there will be a period later. Bai Dalan came over with his face flushed, saw Feng Zonping and the others wearing the Confucian uniforms of the Imperial College, he bowed his hands first, and then boarded the carriage with Man Bao and left. Brother Bai, why is your face so red? Bai Dalan said, dried. Have you bought the paper yet? Bai Dalan nodded, took out 2 booklets from the book basket and said, it's all here. Man Bao flipped through it, and said pleasantly, it's quite complete, are you sure it's true? There will be no fakes in the Imperial College, don't worry. Man Bao, how much is a book? This volume is mainly Taijing and Mo Yi, 5 tales of silver, this volume is the topic of policies and poems, 10 tales of silver. Man Bao opened his mouth wide and found his own voice after a while, Senior Brother Bai, this is handwritten, it's just the questions for the mid-year and end-of-year exams in the past 3 years, is it so expensive? Bai Dalan nodded. I haven't even asked the questions for the big exam yet. I have the questions for the major exams over the years. I bought them from a relationship when I came to Beijing for the exam. It also cost 20 taels of silver. I have all the questions for the past 10 years. Man Bao lamented, doing papers can really make money. Bai Dalan also felt, however, this paper is not easy to buy. The papers of the Imperial College are rarely circulated outside the school. At most, there are a few volumes in some big bookstores, but they are only quietly sold to some rich and wealthy children. Most people don't buy it, even inquire about it. I can't hear it. But when Bai Dalan was able to buy it, Mr. Zhuang took him to see Mr. Lan, who gave him a letter, and after he arrived in the capital, he found an academic officer to set up the purchase. Although there are no repeated questions in this year's exam, by looking at the exam questions over the years, he can roughly know the scope of the doctor's questions, which book has more and which book has less. You will feel more confident when you take the test. Man Bao put away the brochure, and said to Bai Dalan, "Brother Bai, when we get back, we will ask Shan Bao and Bai Er for money. There is also my 5 taels of silver." Originally, she thought it would be enough to prepare 5 taels of silver, plus the piece of silver given by Bai Shan, but who knew that the paper was so expensive? Man Bao looked at the paper in his hand, rolled his eyes and asked, "Brother Bai, you said I asked my nephews to copy the paper and sell it, can you sell it?" The next update will be around 8 p.m.